Yeah.
You're listening to the Divinely Uninspired podcast from Journey Church with my friends Penny, Jeremy, and Paul. They're the problem, it's them.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. I appreciate that. Welcome back to a new episode of the Divinely Uninspired podcast, the podcast from Journey Church. And we are back 2024, coming in strong. Jeremy, you got some headphone issues?
I don't hear anything in my headphones.
Hey, we are back for the first podcast of 2024, and we are going smooth as silk, as we usually do here on the podcast.
So speaking of our friend Taylor, apparently there's a lot of controversy right now around her. I got on the Twitterverse this morning, and the Golden Globes, apparently, do you guys know about this? So there was a comedian, Joe Coy hosted it, and people were talking about how awful it was, and apparently he made a Taylor Swift joke, and she ignored it, and then got up and left afterwards.
Oh. She did not.
Yeah, it's the thing. Like he made a joke. She like took a drink and didn't even like look at the stage. And it wasn't even like a bad joke. It was something about like the Golden Globes where you see less coverage of Taylor Swift than the NFL or something like that. Like it was just like a joke about like her whole Travis Kelce thing. But apparently Taylor Swift does not have a sense of humor.
Well, maybe we could all write that down and we could all say it. And
you can look it up
and leave
for all you Swifties out there. But
his monologue was at the beginning and the joke was at the beginning.
No, his joke was later, I thought.
Well, he made the monologue.
Oh, so you know about it because it's a Swiftie. Did you get like a Twitter? Did you get like a tweet that goes out to, "This is who we hate now"?
His monologue was terrible. It was pretty bad.
I didn't watch any of it. I didn't even know the Golden Globes is actually a real thing. I hear people talk about it. I didn't know it was a show.
But I really like him actually as a comedian. I think he's funny. Like some of his stuff, of his Asian jokes are really great.
Yeah, we know.
Penny's like, that is my mother-in-law.
Yeah,
and
is that why you relate to it? I feel like that's what's up. I've never listened to stuff, but I did feel like everybody was saying like basically his whole shtick is just like his mom is Asian, which he's Asian.
Yeah,
so.
he's Vietnamese, I think.
Yeah, Vietnamese.
Vietnamese is Asia.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
anyway, so there's that.
So the voices you're hearing joining me, Paul, are Pastor Jeremy over there. He started off on Taylor.
Yeah,
going in hard.
I'm gonna bring her down.
Take that 2024. We're off. We're kicking. And then the leader of her fan club, Penny, on the other side.
That's right. Leave her alone.
We've looked at the ratings and we've decided this year that we're going to be a Taylor Swift podcast. We're going to debate her each week.
Yeah.
Pros and cons of what's Taylor been up to, who's she been dating.
I've got a lot of cons.
New songs. Well, we have heard from the past. It's a mixed bag here, but I think everybody overall is kind of a fan here, right?
I'm looking. Well, I am.
I know you. Well, of the full-time staff, I know Kyle is. So
Kira's also a fan. Yeah. We got some fans around here. Jeremy's just a hater.
I just don't. I don't care for her.
Her music was fine.
Her music's
it's taken a turn. I don't care for her, but
yeah,
she's got some bangers. When she's on the Super Bowl in 30 years, and we're like, oh, remember all those songs.
I just don't know what she makes music, but what does she do to make the world better? Like there's any stories about her like humanitarian or philanthropy efforts?
No one cares.
Well, they should.
No one cares about philanthropy
or humanitarian efforts.
What are we
if she makes the world better?
I do.
She sings and she's entertaining.
Yeah.
What did Madonna do when we were kids?
What happened to her, by the way?
She got
old.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, she's real old.
How old is she now?
Like in her 60s.
She's like 45. It's gross.
No.
Oh, she's way older than 45.
Ooh, let's all take a guess. I
bet
62.
65.
Oh, I say she's at least 65.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, pins and needles. Let's get sweet goodness. That was so loud. I apologize. Madonna is born in 1958. She's currently 65 years old.
Oh,
Penny and Jeremy nailed it. Now, she is looking a little different, and
she had some work done.
Yeah, you have to start aging gracefully. I'm sorry.
When will people? So we're going off on a way up. When will people stop getting the facelift that just
the tight one?
It doesn't work. Like, I don't mind like people doing like. I think it's weird that people do the Botox and stuff because your face doesn't move. But like the facelift where they like stretch your face. Like, has anybody ever looked at that and been like, "That's what I wanted to look like"?
I like a nice, like a woman who could really go through a wind tunnel because she's got smooth.
Yeah.
It's very aerodynamic. What do you think about those things, Penny? Being the woman in the room.
So facelift, no. I'm a big fan of Botox. That can be very subtle if you want it to be. You don't have to get like a bunch of injections like a Kim Kardashian where like you have no emotion in your face. But yeah, Botox can take away those wrinkles in your forehead when you've been angry at people. So,
so then we never know if you're angry or happy. We're just like, what is your face telling us right now?
It's cheaper than the medication to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. Well, I don't even know where to go from there. So, okay. Taking care of yourself. It's a good start to this. It is 2024, and I'm going to kick this off since we're already about 30 minutes into this and ask Penny, you got any resolutions for this year?
No. I'm just going to be very honest. No, because I feel like it's one of those things where everyone just says they have them and then they fail.
Well, that's quitter talk, but I would say...
You miss all the shots you never take.
Oh, goodness.
I would say Penny doesn't need any because she's practically perfect as it is now. So
Practically perfect in every way.
Yeah. All right, Jeremy, what do you think? You got resolutions or you just...
Yeah, I always make resolutions. I only do 3, though. I keep it simple. So I'm going to quit smoking, travel more, and mental health. I guess this is
like... Is that a verb?
No, I just saw the screen that you had them pulled up. No, mine are... The top 15. I mean, I did mine in my sermon, so anybody that actually paid attention to my sermon knows them. I want to pray more, be less stressed, which, I mean, we'll see how that goes. And then every year I always have like a health dynamic. So this year...
Flossing?
Flossing. I don't floss. I do use the little floss sticks or whatever. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I guess I use those, but I don't like use like the floss the way the dentist wants us to.
Well, the dentist can get out of here. That's my...
Yeah, so I ran... Last year I ran 1,000 miles, and so I want to run 1,500 this year.
Oh,
well, you just hang out with my husband.
Well,
he'll help you
he
with
runs a little bit longer. Yeah, but it's actually not as bad as you think, because if you to run 1,000 miles, my average was 3 runs a week, and they were all like over 4 miles each run. But I'm not trying to like brag or anything. That was my goal. So I didn't realize I ran 1,000 miles, and I saw that number on my Nike app, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna increase it.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also doing nothing this year. I've stopped. Cereal season abruptly is over, so we're not eating sugar for a while, but it's going to come back. I have no reason to think that that's going to get going. So
the only sugar you intake is your cereal intake?
Well, that's the most of it. Yeah. I haven't had anything outside of that in 9 days.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah.
It's nice. I had one of those sugar-free coffees for the first time, and it tasted so sweet. It was weird.
Hey.
Because it's like, oh.
Let's get a cake.
You know what I ate the other day?
No bread either. For this,
I tried to get us a cake. I don't know if we talked about that, but the cake boss, but it didn't happen. I watched. So this is a throwback to shows. I love. I used to listen to the audiobooks on trips, the Reacher stuff, and Amazon has a series.
Jack Reacher?
Yeah, Jack Reacher.
It's great.
And Amazon has a show about it, and he eats Clark bars. I had never in my life ever eaten a Clark bar, and the other day I saw one at the gas station. It's delicious. Like it's way better than a Butterfinger.
What is it?
It's a peanut butter chocolate candy bar. Like it's amazing though. It's I don't know. You can't hardly ever find them. I've only found one gas station that has them, but they are delicious. It's basically, I think it's better than Reese's. I'll go and even say it. But
I don't love my peanut butter and my chocolate mixing.
But he eats them in the thing. But it's way better than a Butterfinger. I think that it's delicious, but you can hardly find them anymore.
Ooh, look, a little cup down there, a little peanut butter cup.
Yeah. A Clark cup, yeah, big stuff.
I'd eat that.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be our next segment for next time. Would we eat it?
Well, I'm hoping that, because typically when I say things on a podcast, they show up on my desk at some point. So I can't find Clark bars after that one play at time. So hopefully I can. Somebody will.
How many meatloafs did you get this year? That's not what it is.
Meatloaf?
Logs? What did
summer sausages?
Summer sausages.
I got a whole box of them.
Nice.
Delivered. It was for the host staff.
Right. What happened to those?
Well, they've been mostly consumed. I'll bring you the ones I don't like. And the turkey one, you all can have that one. And then I got 2 more. So I got 3 this year.
I would have no problem killing a turkey either. If we're going back to off the air comments, turkeys are terrible, terrible animals. They're just violent and ugly. So
turkey's overrated. I wouldn't.
Dry.
Yeah. So resolutions, Jeremy's going to eat more Clark bars.
I want to find some. Yeah. Well, you said no sugar, and I don't eat a lot of sugar either, but if I can get a hold of Clark bars a lot more, I might actually eat some more.
When I eventually, maybe mid-February, March, get back into the sugar, it's going to be an ugly scene because, it's always sad when you get back in it. You just start feel terrible that first time. It's delicious and my brain is happy, but nothing else is excited about.
That's a good idea though for the winter time, like taking a break from sugar because you really don't have the opportunity to burn it off as much as others. So
yeah, you do. You just go run.
Well, it's too cold out. My poor dog, her arm.
You warm up after a mile.
So our sweet Goldie, this is how we judge if she needs more exercise. Is when she lays on her side. If her front paws both touch the ground. She's doing all right. And now that one's dangling a little bit high because it's been too cold to run around outside. So she's getting a little tubby. No one's going to read their Bible every day of the year this year.
I already do it. I don't have to make it a resolution.
Yeah. Nice. Did you, either one of you, ever do the 365 Bible book, like the one where they set it out where you're like, this is January 1st to read?
No, but my favorite thing is right now Jamie's doing, she read through the Bible before and she got into like Leviticus and she's like, this is terrible. And I was like, well, that's why it's not always the best to read it the way they want. But no, so this year, instead of reading it, she's doing the Audible version on YouVersion where they just read it to you.
Nice.
And so like every morning I wake up and she's in the bathroom getting ready and it's just like this English guy reading like Old Testament verses.
It doesn't count as reading, but it's good.
And she gets mad a lot. She'll come out like talk to me about it. Like I'm the one that did these things. She'll be like, why is this in there? I'm just like, I have nothing to do with that story other than it's in there. So.
Wow.
It's kind of been our morning ritual. It's her listening to the Bible, then coming out and getting mad at me for something I have nothing to do with.
Well, Jamie, we love you. Stick it out.
Yeah.
That's
you just got to make it through those first 5 books.
Listen, Genesis, it's very front loaded, the Bible. You get that January, you really start like, oh, this is good. We start getting all these stories, and then you get to February and you're like, oh man, we really knocked out everything we learned in Sunday school almost immediately after
But
Exodus.
then you learn all the stuff they didn't tell you in Sunday school.
Well, if you hang in there, but I feel like with people running and with people eating better, by March, it's all over. So hang in there, guys. If you were a fan of Lost, the Bible is a little bit like that. It's very in the front. You're like, oh, it's got me. I'm in. And then it starts getting a little slow. And then there's some great stuff here and there in the middle. And then
you all end up in heaven. It's like Lost.
Well, I was going to say it ends and you don't know what really happened. You read Revelation. You're like, well, that could be, it's up for interpretation. So the Bible and Lost, same thing. So
did you have those resolutions pulled up for a reason?
Oh, I was just going to talk about anybody's resolutions. I have none. I have no.
I do need to sleep better. I don't sleep well.
Oh, same.
I have not this week, but usually sleep pretty well. The thing is, people start resolutions, and again, the gym I'm sure is packed right now.
Yeah, it's pretty awful.
And when I was a regular gym person, I would go most of the year, and then January 1, you show up and who are all these people on all the machines and all the treadmills and all the weights? It's just crazy. But by February, it's kind of sad. You feel bad that 90% of the people are gone. So.
I like confidence being on there. That would be an awesome one, just like to do a whole year of just everything you do, just 100% confidence.
Well, I've never thought of having confidence.
Like flying a plane?
Yeah, exactly. Like, just don't even think about it. Just be like, yeah, I can do that, and then do it. And just... even if you fail, just the next thing that comes up, just be confident you can do it.
I'm going to be just like Penny this year. That's right. No matter what comes my way, I can handle it.
That's right.
No big deal. Yeah, I don't see anything on this list that I'm going to do because there's nothing that you can just do.
How did flossing really make that top list?
Well, they say every time you go to the dentist, they're like, are you flossing? You know the answer to that.
We should have a whole dentistry podcast because I got a whole take on dentistry.
Oh, man. It's the
It's a good one.
chiropractic of the mouth, right?
It is. It's, yeah.
I will not be on that one. It's the worst. I hate the dentist.
That's my point, is that it's anyway, I won't say what I want to say. We'll save it.
You have to be true to your teeth, Penny, or they will be false to you. How about that?
Hey.
There's some dad stuff.
I take care of my teeth.
That's good. Well, then you don't have to be flossing more. You can work on your happiness or
I just hate the dentist.
The guy in general, or just going to the doctor. Like you hate your dentist, or
we will get into that later.
We'll have a whole episode about it. We should have a whole episode.
We'll
bring a dentist in and just really make them feel bad.
Do we have any dentists here that want to get on and argue?
We do
side?
actually.
Well, that rescinded. That was an empty promise.
I didn't say everything I wanted to say.
So yeah, dentistry is great. I don't mind my dentist. Honestly, I don't really ever have too much of a problem. I don't like the...
no, I like dentists. I don't have a problem with the dentist. It's the industry I have a problem with.
Well, it's because it's kind of like a used car place where you go, or a body shop where you're like, if you get a good one, it's great. Otherwise, you go in and they're like 16 root canals. This guy needs them. And you're like, I don't know if that's accurate because I haven't had a soda in 6 months and I floss 3 times a day. I don't know what you're talking about. So,
yeah.
So, honest dentists, we appreciate you. The rest of you all do better in 2024.
That should be your resolution. Do better.
Or be more confident. Just go full board. No, everybody needs braces.
Let's just do better in 2024.
Just put braces on everybody. Just when they come and fit them for them.
Hey, listen.
Give them the laughing gas. They walk out with braces and a $6,000 bill.
Well,
there's so much to unpack here. Like,
all right,
we could talk.
Have
about
either
this
of you
forever.
ever had the gas?
Yeah.
Oh man, I had not until. So I didn't go to the dentist. If we're gonna get into it,
I wasn't planning on it.
I wasn't. I had not gone to the dentist in years because my insurance had lapsed, and I just decided it was dumb and I didn't need it. And I brushed my teeth; it was fine. So the first time that I went back, they had to do a deep cleaning, or they said that. Who knows? But they gave me that gas, and they can do a deep cleaning whenever they want. That is, I understand why people go
just to get the gas.
I understand why people do this as a thing. It was amazing. I'm like, they're just prodding and poking, and I'm like, all right, you do whatever you need to do. I'm just going to lay here with this tube. It's pretty good stuff. So I have gotten off of that gas. It's been years. It's been 8 years or so. So I don't have to worry about that as my list. So yeah, think about what your resolutions are. We have none. It seems like too much. Actually, Jeremy named some, but I forget.
I have some. I got a pretty good track record with resolutions. That's all I do 3, and I just make them things that are fairly simple that I already want to do anyway.
I would say I always failed. So
Yeah.
much like when you take a before and after picture when you start working out or doing like a thing, and you just have a bunch of fat pictures of yourself because you never finish P90X. You just get it started and get excited.
That's so accurate.
And then people go through your phone and they're like, why do you have all these fat pictures of yourself in your underpants? And you're like, go stay on my phone. That's what you got to do. So most of my entertainment that I get now is from Instagram, because I guess I'm becoming that age. And they love to put, guess what the top hits were 25 years ago. And you're like, 25 years? Like, oh my gosh. So 1999 was 25 years ago, and I was going to go through these top hits and what we thought about how old we're getting. But I'm going to skip that because we really broke it down in this first segment. So
that was the year of women, if that's accurate. I mean, the first
top songs.
Yeah, I mean, that's Cher, TLC, Monica, Whitney Houston, Britney Spears, Sixpence None the Richer. Yeah. That's a girl singer. Christina Aguilera.
Deborah Cox. That's a lady.
The whole Barbie movie was a scam. I mean, 25 years ago, women were doing pretty good. Other than Sugar Ray on that list.
Take that, Barbie movie.
Yeah, take that.
Way to bring it back. What is happening?
For the record, two out of us really love the Barbie movie, so it's fine.
You can guess which one did.
Yeah, he is very, very against it. Destiny's Child had a couple hits. This was back when Beyonce was good.
Beyonce is still good.
Eagle Eye Cherry, yeah. I love that song. Pearl Jam. Oh, that's Last Kiss.
Eagle Eye
That's
Cherry
my least favorite Pearl Jam song. Well, that's when Pearl Jam sold out so that they could get airtime on popular radio.
All of Pearl Jam songs are tied for a worst song for me.
No, so. That is not accurate.
They're just Hootie and the Blowfish, but less understandable.
I would even put them in the same. No,
I mean, listen, no one can see this list, but if you want to look up
there's a lot of women. They did really well in 1999.
We were all worried about Y2K. The end of the year was going to be rough, but we're not going to get into this because we've got lots to talk about. So there seems to be a wave of celebrities suddenly being baptized, and
it's a pretty small wave if that list you gave us is all the word.
But that's 3 big deals in like the last 3 months. Like that's like people who. So if you don't know what we're talking about, Hulk Hogan recently.
Hulk Hogan's always been a Christian. Remember, you eat your vitamins, take your vitamins, eat your vegetables, say your prayers.
Yeah, but then Hulk Hogan has also he's been in the mix with some less than Christian activities that he's been known for in the last few years, and they're getting ready to celebrate 40 years of Hulkamania, and they're not going to invite him on the show because he's such a pariah still from his last incident. So hopefully he's got that turned around. Him and his current wife, they got baptized. We've got Kat Von D. I don't know. She's not the celebrity Hulk Hogan is, but she was a pretty big deal. She turned away from witchcraft, and actually she was a tattoo artist, and now she's been baptized. And her article, did you all read any of these articles?
I did not read the articles about her. I knew about that because it was on some blogs that I follow about when she became a Christian.
It was very interesting, the reading of it, because I tried to listen to a podcast she was on, and boy, I don't know how she ever had a show. It was she was worse on the mic than
I think her claim to fame was, she was famous, but wasn't she with Jesse James? Well,
she was on his tattoos.
Yeah, but Jesse James, the tattoo artist, weren't they like a hot item? And then he left her for
Sandra
Bullock.
And then they left Sandra Bullock for somebody. It was just Jesse James is not the greatest guy either. But she turned away, and she said the biggest problem she had from people when she got baptized was from actual Christians saying terrible things about her. So we got any people who don't do that?
Well, I think what happens is it's a weird world in the Christian world because, we want to play this role of we're not the victims. That's not the right word, but the culture's out to get us. The world's out to get us, which part of that is true. Yeah. But part of that is true. But then all of a sudden now you have these people that have a platform, are celebrities, and they become Christians, and it's like people don't want to buy it. And I'm just like, I mean, let's get into all the Christian celebrities, the pastors that have gotten in trouble in the last 2 or 3 years, and it's the big ones. I mean, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just don't understand the condemnation. And then it's also like, how much of your life is screwed up as a person that people just don't know about? People know Hulk Hogan's screw ups and Kate Von D and Shia LaBeouf because they're celebrities. So it gets put on Twitter or gets put on a newscast. Your screw ups are just as bad. It's just that nobody cares. Nobody does it. And so it's like, it's just hypocritical to me, I think, sometimes when people, there are people that we've baptized here at Journey. This is going to sound awful, but it's just true. That when we do it, sometimes I stand back and I'm like, all right, we'll see how this goes. Just because I know like that's a lot to overcome what they've had in their past. And I believe they can do it, but it's also a process. You don't just like get baptized and the next day your whole life is figured out, right. And so I think to judge these celebrities based on their past, number one, is not Christian, but then also to be like, oh, they got baptized, but then they're still doing some of the same stuff. And I'm like, we all do that. Like, that's just part of it. They're making efforts and so we should support these. Like, I mean, I think when Kanye or Ye became a Christian, which that guy just needs a lot of help in just general. But like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, people just attacked him and I'm like, look, we legitimately right now have a chance at like one of the biggest celebrities in the world, like actually making good choices and stuff. And it's like, people just attacked him and I'm like, well, there we go. Yeah.
So whenever Taylor Swift comes around, that'll be when she puts out.
Oh,
that
she
gospel
was a
album.
Christian and is not a Christian anymore.
Was she a real
the
Christian?
opposite
I
way.
mean,
She went
Just
the
because she's
opposite
saying country
way.
music doesn't make
No,
her a country artist.
There's an article. I'll find it. We could talk about dentistry and Taylor Swift all in one
man.
episode.
Stay tuned too.
No,
That was
she
terrible.
admitted one time that she had a Christian faith, but then that she's kind of backed away from it just because of, not because of her platform, but just because of like things.
Well, okay, so let's talk about Hulk Hogan and Kat Von D and Shia LaBeouf, because these people basically had a really rough past, right? And then let's say they did do the right thing and come to Christ and decided to head back to church. But is it really necessary that they share that with everyone? I mean, wouldn't it be better if they just humbled themselves? And really, I mean, the idea of what they want to do is better themselves, not to tell everybody like, hey, I've made a decision.
Well, I think like with Hulk Hogan, like his was just on Instagram. He like put a picture of him getting baptized, right? And then it became like, it blew up and people started talking about it. And I'm like, how many people do we get baptized here that put it on Facebook or Instagram? It's a big moment in their life. So they put it on there for their friends and stuff to see. So I think some of the criticism, I don't know if they were doing it to, you know what I'm saying? I think they were doing it, and then it just because they're public figures, it became public.
Well, I think it's what people always say, but follow the money. So if you're Hulk Hogan and you put it on there and you say, hey, I have a platform here and, I got baptized and I'm really feeling my faith and I like to share that with people, that would be helpful. But if he starts selling like Christian Hulk Hogan t-shirts or something like
but here's the thing, it's kind of like one of those things where if people go to hospitals and they take pictures, or like celebrities go to hospitals and they're like, I was here with this child who has cancer, and I'm like, do we really need to put that on there? Like, it's just some things, I don't know. I know that Hulk Hogan is having he's fighting with his daughter because his daughter is also posting things about like, oh well, I don't talk to my dad, or I didn't go to his wedding. And I'm like, it's just like some things let's just keep it private.
Yeah, well.
But that's a cultural problem. Nobody keeps anything private.
Yeah.
I believe someone once said, Penny, hide it under a bush. Oh no, he's letting it shine. And you really, of all people with the children's ministry, should know that's what you want to do. Now, like I said, we'll see the next step and hopefully it works out well. And hopefully he's not, I remember as a wrestling person, Jeremy's brought up in the past, I was a big wrestling person in the 90s when this 1999 music list, it was hot. Shawn Michaels was he was a wrestler in the past, and he was kind of a notoriously awful person. And then he got saved and he came back to wrestling, and they really made a big deal of all his merchandise, having a big cross and having a big whatever. So, as long as people aren't doing it for money or for the fame and the clout, Well, but who are we to judge?
I can tell you right now that Lil Nas X is probably not.
Well, it's a Christian phase. He's not.
Yeah,
really
well, yes, that's another person on the list. Lil Nas X was going through he's saying his Christian phase, and boy, did the pitchforks and flames come out real fast. But, we'll see where this heads to.
But the rest of them versus him, like,
Well, we had 3 baptisms, and then so just this weird trend all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, like the other 3, like, and like I said, that's the thing. It's not my place to judge whether it's legit or not. I mean, because it's just not. But at least, but with him, it's just like, all right, man, like you got a lot to overcome there.
Yeah,
there's a lot. Like you've set yourself up in this one. Like
it's true. I mean, we've talked about in the past the same thing when ICP started talking about it. So, well, the one that really though, I have the 3 of them was Shia LaBeouf, because it sounds to me like he may be done acting, and the article is talking about him. He joined the Catholic Church fully, and he wants to become a deacon in that. And I started looking into what that means, because I did not know. I've always just heard deacons, and at the church I grew up in, those were just the people who they would pass the plate around.
So why is he on there? What's his story?
Who's that?
I mean, I know who Shia LaBeouf is.
Well, he's been. I think that, and I didn't read the article. I know that he's been like. I didn't read this article. I know you didn't put links to articles. You guys have read the articles. I didn't Google it, but I do know that Shia LaBeouf has been like for years working through his faith stuff, and I'm wanting to say, and this could be wrong, that it started when he did Transformers with Mark Wahlberg, because Mark Wahlberg is like very openly Christian and like he's Catholic, but like very openly devout in his faith. And I'm wanting to say that he influenced him in some ways.
Well, that's good. The article
that Transformers movie was terrible, but at least something good came out of it.
So, Kyle, I hope you're not listening yet. We haven't got to the big parts of the talks. One of Kyle's favorite movies is the first Transformers. Yeah. And we've had a lot of arguments in the past at the house with this, or at church, the Lord's house. And but this one, I did not know that part about Mark Wahlberg. He seems to have really turned his life around from his...
Yeah, he's very devout. Like he gets up at like 4 a.m. and like works out and then prays for like an hour and does all this crazy stuff.
So as Christians, you're quick to judge some of these names that we threw out there. But if social media had been around when Mark Wahlberg was young, he would not be a star. He if you want to look into his past, he's done some stuff, but he really did turn that around as well. So good for him for this. But the rest of them, it seems like they want to start, living a Christian lifestyle. But this guy wants to be in the church. Like he wants to be part of it. So I'm not as familiar with the Catholic Church as Catholic people are. That's a understatement. But I looked into this a little bit because there's a lot of things that you have to do to become a deacon in the Catholic Church. And it seems like this is where, I'm sure he has plenty of money, and it seems like he's kind of moving on from acting and getting fully involved with this. So I started looking into what it takes to be a deacon, and
just in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, and it's a lot, and
it's a lot to be Catholic. There's got to go through confirmation classes and all that stuff.
Right. It's quite the gatekeeping operation there. But you would hope it would keep out the trouble, and it doesn't seem to. But it made me look into or start thinking about what does it actually take to be a pastor of a regular church. And we've got Jeremy here to talk about that, because we also had an article this week that was, we have a lot of articles and a lot of things in the news where that I think it's good for clicks when a pastor of a church does something that's not very pastoral. Like
this one's pretty not pastoral.
If he goes to where his wife works and threatens to put her coworker's head in the air or in the fryer at McDonald's, it's quite a scene. But then you look into that guy's church and you're like, I don't even. This is barely even a church.
Yeah.
So what? And this is a question I don't know the answer to. So that's why I'm going to ask Jeremy. What does it actually take to? What are the qualifications?
Well, so because it's very loosey-goosey. So it just depends on what church you're talking about, and that's the thing is there's such a broad spectrum of Christianity and churches. As far as what it takes to be okay, so let's you want to get into the semantics of it real quick?
Yeah.
So first of all, you have to define what pastor is. So from a biblical standard, a pastor is a shepherd and overseer. So the semantics of it are technically, if you're just a preacher or a teacher, you're not technically a pastor. You're just someone. The best word that we have in the New Testament for that would be the word evangelist. So evangelists in the New Testament were guys that would go around and travel from church to church and preach, and that's all they would do. Most churches in the 1st and 2nd century did not have dedicated preachers. They would just read letters, talk about them. Then if they had an evangelist that would come and teach them. But for the most part, we're kind of making up these terms at this point. Senior pastor is not an actual biblical term.
Right.
Honestly, children's director, we just made that up. Youth pastor, those are all just made up things. Like they're not in the Bible at all.
Media ministry wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's all. So you're just making it up. So that's the first thing is the word that most people, when you use the word pastor, you're literally, I'm glad you pulled it up because it's in my notes. You're just referring to what 1 Timothy 3 is, and an overseer. So the language we would use in the Christian church would be like an elder. They're the shepherds of the church. And the reason that an overseer and a preacher might be different is because like here at Journey's different. Like I started Journey as the preacher teacher, but now I'm also one of the overseers here. But most churches, I mean, and there was going to come a day when I'm not the preacher here at some point. And the reason you have overseers is because especially in like different denominations, like some of them, you only get 2 or 3 year runs and then they move you, like your convention moves you. Does that make sense? And so you don't want to put somebody in an overseer position that's only going to be at that church for 2 or 3 years. Then you also have the factor of like, you know, even in the Christian churches, like guys are moving jobs every time. I looked up the article the other day before I knew we were talking about this. The average pastor only stays at a church for 5 years. So you don't necessarily want that person to be the overseer or one of the overseers of the church when you know every 5 years you're getting a new one of those, if that makes sense. So the word pastor is really this 1 Timothy 3. So the qualifications for it is blah, blah, blah. Here he goes. He must be blameless, not overbearing, not quick-tempered, which sounds like that guy struggles with that if he's going to put somebody's head in a deep fryer. Not given to much wine, not violent, not pursuing dishonest gain. Rather, he must be hospitable, one who loves what is good and is self-controlled, upright, holy, and disciplined. So that's the biblical standard for being a pastor or overseer. Now, in our context, when it comes to starting a church or being a pastor of a church, it just depends on what denomination you're in. And it depends on, you know, I mean, here's the thing. This is the scary thing because we started this church. You can just go out and start a church. I mean, there's not really, I mean, you got to get some paperwork filed with the government, but it's not super hard. You can just go, you got to have articles of incorporation because you have to incorporate yourself. So like I had to go through all that. Like, I mean, we're a business or a 501c3 business nonprofit. So I had to incorporate ourselves. I had to have a board of directors. I had to do so the first 6 months was really awful because I had to do a ton of paperwork, but that was just all for tax purposes. Right. That was just so the government can track how we're spending our money and that we're incorporated. Once you get through that, I mean, I say this not to insult them, although it's going to come across this way. There are guys in this community that are pastoring churches, and it's not that they don't meet the qualifications of this, maybe the overseer thing, but they have no training, no education. Like they're just, you don't have to in our non-denominational denomination, it's, I obviously have my undergrad, I have a graduate degree. I was ordained at a church. So, I mean, I have all of those things, but you don't have to do any of that. You could just, once you incorporate yourself, you get a couple people buying into what you're saying, you could just start a church. And that is kind of what I brought this up for because, I mean, as a kid growing up, you think, oh, the pastor, that's the leader of the church. This person has been, this is their life. This is what they went to school for. They've clearly, they're a theologian. They know everything. They've done all this stuff. And then as you get older, you start hearing these stories about pastors doing things and you think, well, wait a minute. Yeah. And then they realize that there's no actual, my wife is a teacher and she had certain qualifications to be allowed to be a teacher. She had to go to various things, and whether or not she retained all that information, she still had to, go through, pass all these things. There's so many oversights for it, but it seems like to be a quote pastor, there's almost zero oversight except within the church that you yourself can create. Well, no, it goes in the denominational again. So if you're Baptist, so I mean, I know we knock the Southern Baptists, but I don't. I love them. It's where I grew up. I knock them just because I'm from here and it seems like everybody's Southern Baptist. But no, their convention, which we don't have to get into whether that's biblical or not. Right. But their convention and most of their churches that go under their convention, there's criteria. You have to be well educated. I mean, there's a lot of Baptist churches, if you don't have your doctorate, they won't even take a look at you as far as a senior position. Now, someone that's been through graduate education, I'll tell you, if you're getting a doctorate, you're just doing it because you want to get your doctorate, unless you're going to go teach at a school, because you don't need your doctorate. But I do recommend your master's or your MDiv. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But no, so denominationally, and like you were saying, the Catholic Church, there's a lot more strict. So if you go to a denomination, there will be stricter guidelines, which is why the non-denominational movement has blown up. And especially even And then even within like things like the independent Baptist churches, so they're not part of the Southern Baptist movement. They're Baptist, but they're not Southern Baptist.
Right.
So independent Baptists are kind of non-denominational in the sense that you can just go do whatever you want, and so here at Journey is an independent Christian church. We do not have anybody outside of our leaders that are overseeing us, if that makes sense.
Yes. And
but our oversee, so yeah. Anyway.
Well, to me, that's kind of the thing. Like, I kind of like it, but it's also because, like you were saying about the convention, everything I've ever heard about those things, it always, there's never like a positive story coming out of if you hear the Southern Baptist Convention or if you hear the overarching groups of these things, it's never a positive story, but it's also having that keeps. I feel like there's a lot of room for people to do whatever they want within.
Well, what it does, I think there's pros and cons. So I do think that in some of these conventions or these denominationals, there is a hesitation to change things that probably need to be changed. Mm-hmm. One particular denomination, I won't say who it was, like it took them 30 days to denounce racism.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because they didn't think it was right. It was because there was all these hoops they had to jump through in order to change this. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, I can go up on stage in 1 week and just be like, yeah, we probably shouldn't be racist because that's anti-biblical, anti-Jesus, really just anti-everything that any Christian thought is about. But, so that's a con. But then a pro of there's more consistency in theological training, like so somebody's not just getting up on stage and saying stuff that's just off the wall out, so there's pros and cons. I've Jamie knows this, so you guys are gonna find this out. Like one of my favorite things to do is to listen to bad sermons. And like I listen to certain guys I listen to really good preachers, but I listen to really bad preachers because I'm just like, it's almost comical to me, like when they say stuff and I'm just like, like this is insane that you have people that are listening to this.
Right. Well, that's a thing that, and this is, again, that's what I kind of thought about it because people hear pastor and then they'll put Jeremy or they'll put, Jeremy, and if you're in Louisville, Kyle Idleman, and then what's his face down in Texas with the big mega church. All these people are in the same.
Max Lucado?
Well, you can name.
There's a bunch of them.
If you know a big leader of a church, you think pastor, and they're the same in the same bucket, but they're in the same bucket with people who have 20 people in a church, and they get up and they hold their Bible real hard and they pick one verse and then they start validating all of their beliefs on one verse, even though the rest of the Bible would, contradict their beliefs and things like that. So I think
what is happening?
Jeremy's fixing his mic, and Penny can't let it go.
Well, I'm gone. Like I can't even hear in my ears.
All right, so Jeremy was really sharing some insight on what it takes to the actual qualifications for a pastor.
And I'll say that, like, I think that, like, for us, so, like, nobody, like, so when I went and got my graduate work, like, I did not need to do that. I did it because I wanted to be the most qualified to not only lead this church, but if I ever move on, be able to lead another church. And so, like you said, Kyle Idleman and some of those guys, we're non-denominational, but we are an independent Christian church. So there's a conference for us. You can choose to go to it. It's not like the other ones where you have to go to it and pay into it. So there's consistency even in independent Christian churches. But not all of them are like that. A lot of non-denominationals they just do whatever they want.
Well, so my big deal with all this was, as a lay person, you hear a story about a pastor and you think, oh, those Christians, oh, this mess. But in all honesty, it takes very little to call yourself a pastor in a lot of circumstances. So
yeah. And like my ordination, like outside of my biblical college training, my ordination was a 6-month process. I had to go through, like, it was at my home church. I was already working at a different church, but I wanted to get ordained at my home church, which is Oklahoma. Like, it was me meeting with elders and them, like, grilling me on, like, questions and ideas and thoughts and all that stuff. And, you had to, and again, that varies, but, there is a lot to being ordained. Now, if you start a church, there's nothing that stops you from getting 4 of your buddies as long as it's in your bylaws and just, that's the other thing, we have to have bylaws, but just ordaining you, without any type of training or education or any outside sources saying, yeah, you're qualified to actually be a pastor or preacher of this church.
So listen to what the pastor says, but also, again, another theme, read your Bible, people. Figure out, things on your own as well. If it's something they're saying doesn't sound right, look it up, get into it. And, Jeremy's always open for questions, more so than hugs,
Yeah.
And if you have, theological questions or things going on, he is available. Penny, our sweet friend over here, had something go wrong with her setup, but she has, I believe, some real tough questions that she's going to get into.
They're not tough questions. It's more for Jeremy. So let's say the Southern Baptist Convention is hiring, or a specific church is hiring a pastor, and you give educational requirements, but let's say that something within that is not necessarily education. Let's say it's a woman. Mm-hmm. Do they have to go through the convention to hire a pastor that's not set into their bylaws?
I am not up to date with all of the Southern Baptist ins and outs. I do know that I think most of them now get to choose independently as a church who they want to hire. However, if they were to hire someone, I know like one of the big ones right now is there's a church here in Louisville that has a female pastor as a Southern Baptist church. So the last convention, it made national headlines. The convention voted that church out of the Southern Baptist Convention. So they are no longer allowed to call themselves a Southern Baptist church.
Okay.
So I want to say, and again, this is just the Southern Baptist, I'm wanting to say that there is some independence of the congregation to hire a person. But if that person doesn't meet qualifications that the Southern Baptist Convention, and the other thing about Southern Baptist conventions is there's the big Southern Baptist Convention,
right?
Then there's the state convention, and there's even regional conventions. So like there's convention on convention on convention. And I don't know if the regionals are called conventions or not, but they're called something else, I think. But yeah, so you not only have the big convention, you have a state, and then you also have like the Nelson Baptist Association. So all of the ones in Bullitt County and Nelson are a part of the Nelson Baptist Association, who reports to the state convention. The state convention reports to the overarching North American Southern Baptist Convention.
Okay, so requirements. Let's say, for your sake, like you don't have to answer this because it could be pretty personal. Like, do you feel that there are requirements to being a pastor of a non-denominational church? Like, I mean,
yes.
Let's say like someone who comes in that's single. I mean, can he effectively pastor a church?
Yes. I mean, Paul would argue that's the best way to do it. Now, obviously, things have changed since Paul.
Not me.
Not that's Paul. Paul from the Bible would argue that's how actually because his thing was a woman and family. I mean, kind of he says it's kind of a distraction. Now that's not realistic, I don't think. And even in the Catholic Church, that's what's fascinating. They're now allowing priests to get married because they've realized, okay, that's probably not realistic that we do that. So for me, an independent Christian church, or actually any independent church that doesn't have a convention or an overarching thing, I would hope that those churches would have qualifications. Education would be part of it. I think that going through this 1 Timothy 3 list would be a big thing. So I would hope that they would do that. I would have a hard time, I say this, I would have a hard time hiring somebody if they did not have the educational qualifications. Now, that said, some of my best hires are people that do not have traditional theological backgrounds and training. And I think that if you find somebody that's high quality, you could hire them to work on your church staff and maybe even be a minister on staff. I just think for your lead minister, I would have a real hard time believing you could hire somebody that would be effective without some type of qualifications and educational background. Not saying he couldn't, but I would have a hard time with that.
Okay.
Well, I heard stories of bigger churches that's part of their deal is they have, if you're going to be a pastor or if you're going to be visible to talk to people, then you must have certain qualifications, but they will hire the best role, the best person who at that job, whether or not they even have faith.
Well, I think some of it's all made up. I mean, like it goes back to like that whole point of like some of our, even here at Journey, we've made up most of our, the staff jokes about like they want to be called this, and I'm like, I don't care what you call yourself. Here's the job description. Here's what I need you to do. You can title yourself whatever. But we're also, we're very careful. Like even in the Christian world, so I have no problem with people calling me a pastor. It's actually not the right word unless you're if you're a preacher of a church, but you're not on the overseeing team, which would be your elders, or whatever I'm going to call ours, management team. People call them different things. But if you're not on that team, and then you're not actually a pastor, like you're you again, goes back to your best word biblically would be like you're an evangelist. You're just a teacher and a preacher.
Yeah.
So again, like that's the semantics of it. But I do think language matters, and I think that stuff does. So again, but I think it's really important because again, here's two examples. So number one, like, we did the whole thing about like the wise men a couple weeks ago, like the Christmas story. Like that's not even like, you don't have to have no Bible college education to like just open up your Bible and be like, oh, the wise men weren't actually at the manger. I watched a church do a Christmas play recently where the wise men delivered the gifts to baby Jesus in the manger. And I'm like, now that at the end of the day, does that really matter? Probably not. But a little bit of work and you would have been like, that's, we could include the wise men, but like, let's make that a different part of the story, and it was just like, now here's the thing. I'm not a huge betting person. I would be willing to bet that if I went to that pastor and asked him why you did that, he would be like, oh, because it's part of the Christmas story. And I'd be like, well, no. The other thing with the educational part is like, I've had two guys recently within the last couple of years. One of them offered to do it on this podcast, which I thought was funny. Wanted to debate me about the King James only stuff. Like, if you don't know, there's King James only people. And I'm like, man, like, I don't play this card a lot. I'm pretty well theologically trained. I tear your arguments up in about 6 sentences, and it's not like I would not do that. Like, I'm not saying that to be like, oh, I'm so smart. I'm doing that to say like, I have the theological background and training to know it's nonsense what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, anyway, but.
Well, I believe part of my job description is I'm in charge of this podcast, and I say a hard pass on any debates.
It was a friendly. I said, yeah, that's just not what this is for. If you ever listen to it, we kind of have a lot of fun. So, and we talk about serious stuff too, but we're not a debating podcast, except for about Taylor Swift.
Oh, well, there's no debate. She's the worst. But so we'll see. That's very interesting because, like you said, words matter, and I feel like people interchange pastor and evangelist and preacher. They all see it as one kind of thing when really
it's very different.
Yeah, it's very different. So, and it can be dangerous because you follow people who, that's the pastor, and you're like, well, that guy got a hot, he got a wild hair and decided he wanted to start doing something.
And then you have churches that have a pastor preacher but don't have an overseeing team. So those are the real dangerous ones because then you have a guy that has really no accountability. Mm-hmm. Like there's nobody. We have a team of people here that in our bylaws they're the ones they can let me go. Like even though I'm part of the team and they can. Like there's accountability to them that I built into our bylaws. Nobody asked me to do that. I actually built that into our bylaws myself. And before we had people that filled those roles, I actually had outside people from other churches that filled those roles for the first 4 or 5 years. Because for me, it was very important that I'm held accountable as much as anybody. I should be the most held accountable person in this entire building,
Agreed.
And so, anyways, all that to say, that's the dangerous part of these pastors, preachers in some of these areas that really don't have any built-in accountability.
Well,
and they could say and do whatever they want, and people believe it. And here's the thing, and the people believe it, and then it just, I feel sorry for those people that are underneath that person that are teaching them things that are just not good or accurate.
Yeah. Well, that. Sadly, I think there's more of that than we'd like to talk about, but I think that was a pretty deep dive into that. I was not expecting all that, but that's good.
Any questions, Penny?
That was it. I thought it was great. It's so weird to hear you all without the headphones on. It's like a weird conversation.
So this is something that me and my wife talk about all the time, but this is the first church that we've ever been a part of that actually you start talking about something from the stage and then you actually like break it down in the Bible. Like you start giving context for things and things like that. You don't just pick and choose the verses that make, you don't start the service with a point and then find words in the Bible that sound like they fit that point. And you start giving history and context and you give, you can tell us these kind of things. And I know you can't, what you just did is perfect for the podcast. It's not good for church because I don't feel that's what people come on Sunday to hear, but I think it's really interesting. And I think it's something that people should know about and they should be able to, look deeper than just their Sundays of how this whole thing got put together. So I had not expected that to go that long. So we're going to wrap it up though real quick. We're going to talk about just about praying for trivial things. And this is something that we also laugh about when Jeremy's brought it up in the past, and I hope I'm not stealing anything from his notes, but he has a good, I know his go-to for this is, you're at Target or at the mall and you just, Lord, I really need a parking spot. can you please help me to get somewhere close? And should we do that? Should we pray for trivial things? What you got any thoughts on that, Penny?
I will be the first to say that I do pray for trivial things. I'll be like, if I lose my keys, I'm like, God, if you could just help me find my keys so I don't get upset. Like, and then I find them and I'm like, thanks God. And I'm like, was it really him doing that, or was it just me finding the keys? Like, I don't do it a lot, but there are moments when I feel like if I'm going to lose my mind, like if I don't find my keys, or if I'm looking for a spot, or like if traffic's crazy. I've never prayed for like a sports team or anything crazy like that, but I have prayed for trivial things before. So is it wrong?
Well, I think maybe, and before Jeremy can jump in on this, I think the way you present that is actually not too bad. If, from my personal point of view, is that you're not like, I just need my keys, but it's like, I'm going to lose it. Like something bad is going to happen. I believe I'm going to act out. I'm going to do something. If I don't, I'm very stressed, I'm losing. It's not, I need a comfort, or I need something,
right?
Something to help me along the way, like a parking spot or something like that. It's nothing that you're being selfish about. It's saying, hey, listen, I'm in a pickle right here, even if it's a small pickle. But what do you think about that, Jeremy?
I don't think it's bad or wrong to pray about trivial things, as long as that's not your entire prayer life. That's the caveat, because for some people that might be their entire thing. I also don't think it's bad as long as you realize that's not really the main thing. Again, I think that as long as you have a healthy prayer life outside of, hey, I need my keys, or help me find this parking spot, or, I think it's silly that you would pray for a sports team, but as long as you don't make that your only prayer life or the only time you pray, and as long as you do have the understanding, that really isn't the main part of it, I don't think, we all do it. I think everybody at some point has been like, okay, I pray in traffic, not that traffic will open up, but that I don't murder somebody because I don't have patience in traffic. So, but that's, so yeah, I think we all do that.
Typically, I just ask forgiveness in traffic because I get frustrated, and
yeah,
I'm teaching the children in the back, don't be like your dad. He's not yelling, but he's not impressed with what's happening.
I think as long as you're not only praying for trivial things, I think God wants us to pray to him. I think he'll take what he can get from us. So as long as that's not your only thing, and as long as you're not trying to make deals with God through your prayer, like, hey, God, if you help me find my parking spot, I will tithe a little bit more, or I'll, the famous one I always use is like, if you just help me get through this, I'll never sin again. And I'm like, well, you just sinned in your prayer.
Please don't hold me to that.
Yeah. But so, no, I don't think it's wrong. I think people need more prayer life. And I think that if starting with the trivial, and I always say trivial because to some people it's not trivial, but the day-to-day things, I think that's the beginning of a healthy prayer life, as long as it expands beyond that.
Well, I think too many, this is just my personal, it seems like people, a lot of times, they treat God like a genie.
It's magic.
Like you're making a wish, like, oh, I'm just going to talk to this invisible person, and he's going to help me out through my day and make it a little bit better, but that's really not the point of prayer. So
I don't think God helps you find your keys. I think what prayer may do is allow your mind to rest a little bit to where you can focus and then find your keys, if that makes sense.
Just reword it.
Yeah. Well, but I think that prayer is supposed to be comforting, and the scientific side of it, if you think about like chanting and like how mindfulness has become a big thing, what they've studied is when you pray, the same things that are happening in your brain when you're practicing mindfulness or whatever, calm and all that stuff, and chanting and it's all the same stuff. Like it's all the same. I'm not saying they're the same act. I'm saying in your brain, it's doing the same stuff. So it's pretty interesting when you.
Jeremy's walking a tightrope here of what the words actually mean.
Well, if you think about I've preached about it. If you think about like what mindfulness is it's taking time to get outside of yourself and to acknowledge that there's something bigger than you, and to rest in those moments. Well, what is prayer?
Right.
Like that's what prayer is taking the time to get outside of yourself, realize there's something bigger than you, and to align yourself with that versus your own personal agenda. So, I don't think prayer and mindfulness are the same thing, but I think that they have kind of the same effect on us. And yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure they have the same, like in the brain, like you said, the way that sugar and
the way we're wired, they activate in us the same way.
Right.
Now, obviously, we believe that in prayer, there's another element to that I don't think you get by just opening an app and listening to a running creek. But, yep. In the moment, it may kind of be the same.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, filling up. Now, hopefully y'all stuck through this whole episode because we really got into, I always enjoy personally, I enjoy when we get in here and kind of mess around and it's hilarious, but I could just probably sit here and listen to Jeremy talk about the in-depth things of the church over and over. So hopefully you all enjoyed that. If you're interested in what we've got going on at Journey, we've got the Journey app that you can download from your Apple or Android phone, and JourneyShepherdsville.com if you want to check out what we've got going on. If you have any questions or have anything that you'd like talked about on the podcast, you can reach out to Paul at JourneyShepherdsville.com. And until the next time, which might be the big dentistry show we've been promising.
Yeah.
We'll see y'all later.